They told her to quit sniper school, said she didn't have what it takes, that her hand shook too much under pressure. But when the rifle technician saw the 73 notches carved into the stock of her personal weapon, everything they thought they knew about Sergeant Blaze Morrison crumbled to dust. Those weren't practice marks. They were confirmed kills from missions that officially never happened. Welcome to those who left a trace. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps these untold stories alive. Fort Benning, Georgia, home to the United States Army Sniper School, where only the most elite marksmen in the military come to hone their skills to lethal perfection. The course has a 70% failure rate, and those who wash out often never get a second chance at special operations. In the summer heat that made the Georgia training grounds feel like an oven, 24 soldiers had started the 8-week program. By week 6, only 8 remained. Sergeant Blaze Morrison was barely hanging on. She had arrived at sniper school with stellar recommendations from her infantry unit, where she had served as a designated marksman for 3 years. Her shooting scores were among the highest ever recorded in basic marksmanship training. But sniper school was different. It wasn't just about shooting accurately. It was about becoming invisible, about thinking like a hunter, about making impossible shots under conditions that would break most people's concentration. And according to her instructors, Blaze Morrison was failing on every level. Morrison, Staff Sergeant Rick Dalton's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. He was the chief instructor for the sniper program, a man who had spent 15 years perfecting the art of long-range killing. His weathered face showed no emotion as he approached Blaze's shooting position, but his reputation for crushing the dreams of unworthy candidates preceded him like a storm cloud. Blaze remained prone behind her rifle. I pressed to the scope, trying to steady her breathing as she lined up a shot at a target 800 meters downrange. The morning Georgia sun was already making sweat drip into her eyes, and she could feel the weight of Dalton's presence behind her like a physical force. "Take the shot, Morrison," Dalton ordered. Blaze squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and through the scope, she watched the bullet impact 6 inches left of center mass. A miss. Her 4th miss of the morning. Dalton knelt beside her, his voice low, but carrying clearly to the other students nearby. "What's your excuse this time, Morrison? Wind? Mirage? Or are you finally ready to admit that you don't belong here?" Blaze lifted her head from the scope, her dark eyes meeting Dalton's cold stare. At 25, she had already served in 2 combat deployments, had earned the respect of her infantry unit, and had dreamed of becoming a sniper since she first enlisted. But 6 weeks of constant failure had worn her down to the point where she was beginning to believe her instructors might be right. "No excuse, Staff Sergeant," she replied, her voice steady despite the frustration burning in her chest. "No excuse," Dalton repeated mockingly. "That's what you always say, Morrison. No excuse, no improvement, no results. Just miss after miss after miss." He stood up, addressing not just Blaze, but the other students who had gathered to watch what had become a daily ritual of humiliation. "This is what happens when standards get lowered," Dalton announced. "When we start accepting people who look the part, but don't have the mental toughness to actually do the job." Morrison here has been struggling for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of wasted ammunition, wasted time, and wasted resources. Blaze felt her face burning with shame, but she forced herself to remain silent. She had learned that arguing with the instructors only made things worse. "Tell me, Morrison," Dalton continued, "what makes you think you can be a sniper when you can't even hit a stationary target at 800 meters? When your hands shake every time you're under pressure? When you choke on every shot that matters?" This time, Blaze couldn't stay silent. "Staff Sergeant, I know I can do this. I just need more time to—" "Time!" Dalton's laugh was harsh and mocking. "Morrison, we don't have time. Real snipers don't get to ask for more time when there's an enemy combatant in their crosshairs. They either make the shot or their teammates die." He gestured toward the other students. "Look around you, Morrison. These men have been making their shots consistently. They've proven they can handle the pressure. You haven't, and frankly, I'm tired of watching you fail." Dalton pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Blaze. Drop form. Fill it out and turn it in to the orderly room. You're done here. Blaze stared at the form, feeling the eyes of every other student on her. Some looked sympathetic. Others relieved that the spotlight wasn't on them. But all of them were thinking the same thing. She had washed out, just like 70% of the people who attempted sniper school. Staff Sergeant, she said quietly, I'd like to finish the course. Even if I'm not meeting standards, I'd like to complete the training. Dalton's expression didn't change. Morrison, this isn't about completion certificates or participation trophies. This is about producing qualified snipers who can kill the enemy and keep our soldiers alive. You're not sniper material. Accept it and move on. But Blaze Morrison had never accepted failure easily. That evening, as the other students gathered in the barracks to clean their weapons and study field manuals, Blaze sat alone in the armory, staring at her rifle. It was a standard Army M24 sniper weapon system, identical to the ones used by every other student in the course. But something about it felt wrong to her, like trying to wear someone else's clothes. She had requested permission to use her personal rifle for training, but the instructors had denied the request. Standard protocol required all students to use identical equipment to ensure fair evaluation. But Blaze knew that her personal rifle was more than just equipment. It was an extension of herself, modified and adjusted through years of use until it responded to her touch like a musical instrument. The next morning brought the final shooting test of the course. Students who passed would move on to the advanced stalking and observation phases. Those who failed would be removed from the program immediately. Blaze had spent the night practicing with the standard rifle, trying to compensate for the subtle differences in trigger pull and scope alignment that threw off her shots. But as she took her position on the firing line, she felt the same nervousness that had been plaguing her for weeks. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but something deep in her mind was screaming that she was about to fail again. Final qualification. Dalton announced to the remaining 8 students. 10 rounds, 5 targets, ranges from 600 to 1,200 meters. Wind is variable, mirage is moderate. You must achieve at least 7 hits to pass. Miss more than 3 shots and you're done. Blaze settled into her prone position, adjusting the bipod legs and checking her scope settings. The first target was at 600 meters. An easy shot for a trained marksman, but under the pressure of qualification, even easy shots could become impossible. She lined up the crosshairs on the center of the target, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. Through the scope, she saw the bullet impact low and right. A miss. Her heart sank. She was already behind, and there were 9 shots remaining. She couldn't afford another miss. The second target was at 800 meters. Blaze adjusted her elevation and windage, trying to compensate for the conditions. She fired again, and this time the bullet struck the edge of the target. A hit, but barely. By the time she reached the 5th target at 1,200 meters, Blaze had missed twice more. She needed to hit this final shot to achieve the minimum passing score, but the target seemed impossibly small through her scope, wavering in the heat mirage like a ghost. She lined up the shot, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet sailed wide, missing the target completely. Dalton's voice was almost gentle as he approached her position. Morrison, pack your gear. You're done. As Blaze gathered her equipment, she felt the weight of 6 weeks of training evaporating like smoke. She had failed, just as Dalton had predicted from the beginning. As she walked toward the armory to turn in her rifle, she could hear the other students beginning the next phase of their training. But as she entered the armory, she encountered someone she hadn't expected to see. Master Sergeant Tom Rodriguez, the senior armorer for the sniper school. Rodriguez was a quiet man who had been working with precision rifles for over 20 years, and he had a reputation for knowing more about weapon systems than most people knew about their own families. Rough day out there, Morrison, Rodriguez said, not looking up from the rifle he was cleaning. Yes, Master Sergeant, Blaze replied. I'm here to turn in my weapon. Rodriguez finally looked up, studying Blaze with eyes that seemed to see more than most people. You know, I've been watching you shoot for 6 weeks. Watching you struggle with that rifle like you're fighting it instead of working with it. Blaze didn't respond. She was too tired and disappointed to engage in conversation about her failures. "Thing is," Rodriguez continued, "I've also been watching the way you handle your personal gear, the way you maintain your equipment, the way you move. You don't carry yourself like someone who can't shoot." He set down the rifle he had been cleaning and walked over to where Blaze was standing. "Morrison, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to give me an honest answer. Have you ever fired a rifle in combat?" Blaze hesitated. Her military record showed infantry service, but most of her actual combat experience was classified at levels that even the sniper school instructors didn't have access to. "Yes, Master Sergeant," she said finally. "And how did that go for you?" Blaze was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never missed when it mattered." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. Morrison, I've seen a lot of shooters come through this program. Most of them are good soldiers who can learn to be snipers. But every once in a while, I see someone who's already a sniper but doesn't fit the mold that the instructors are looking for." He walked over to a locked cabinet and pulled out a set of keys. "I want to see your personal rifle," he said. Blaze was surprised. Personal weapons weren't typically allowed in the armory during training hours. "Master Sergeant, I don't think." "Morrison, humor me. I've got 30 minutes before the next class, and I'm curious about something." Blaze retrieved her rifle case from her barracks and returned to the armory. As she opened the case, Rodriguez leaned in to examine the weapon, and what he saw made him draw in a sharp breath. The rifle was a custom-built precision instrument, clearly modified by someone who understood the nuances of long-range shooting. But it wasn't the technical modifications that caught Rodriguez's attention. It was the stock. Carved into wood were 73 small notches, each one precisely made, each one representing something that most soldiers would never speak about openly. "Jesus Christ, Morrison," Rodriguez whispered. "Where did you get this rifle?" Blaze's expression became guarded. "I built it myself, Master Sergeant, over several years." Rodriguez examined the notches more closely. They weren't random marks or decorative elements. They were systematic, methodical, each one slightly different from the others in a way that suggested they marked specific events. "Morrison," Rodriguez said slowly, "these notches, what do they represent?" Blaze was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there during her 6 weeks of struggle in sniper school. "Confirmed kills, Master Sergeant. 73 confirmed kills over 4 years of operations that don't officially exist." Rodriguez felt his blood run cold. 73 confirmed kills was a number that put Blaze Morrison in the same category as legendary snipers from previous wars. But if she had that level of experience, what was she doing struggling in basic sniper school? "Morrison, what unit were you with?" "I can't discuss that, Master Sergeant." "Classified?" Rodriguez nodded. He had been in the military long enough to recognize the signs of someone who had operated in the shadow world of special operations, where official records were often deliberately incomplete or misleading. "Can you tell me why you're here?" "At sniper school." Blaze was quiet for a moment, clearly debating how much to reveal. "Because my previous unit was disbanded," she said finally. "Personnel were reassigned to conventional units with cover stories that matched their supposed experience levels. I was given the option of attending sniper school to obtain official qualifications that matched my actual skills." Rodriguez was beginning to understand. Blaze Morrison wasn't a failing sniper student. She was an experienced operator who was being forced to obtain official credentials for skills she had been using in combat for years. "And you've been struggling because you're used to your own equipment, your own methods, your own operational environment," Rodriguez said. "Yes, Master Sergeant. Everything here is different from how I was trained. Different weapons, different techniques, different standards. I've been trying to adapt, but..." Rodriguez held up a hand to stop her. "Morrison, show me how you would normally set up for a long-range shot." "Master Sergeant?" "Use your own rifle. Show me your normal procedures." Blaze hesitated, then began assembling her personal weapon. As Rodriguez watched, he could see the difference immediately. Her movements were smooth and confident, each action practiced to the point of being unconscious. This wasn't someone learning to be a sniper. This was someone who had been operating as a sniper for years. "Range card?" Rodriguez asked. Blaze pulled a worn notebook from her pocket, filled with detailed notes about wind patterns, bullet drop calculations, and environmental factors. The level of detail was far beyond what was taught in basic sniper school. "Morrison," Rodriguez said quietly, "I want you to take a shot at the 1,200-meter target. Use your own rifle, your own procedures. Show me what you can really do." They moved to a private range that Rodriguez had access to as senior armorer. Blaze set up her rifle with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done it hundreds of times in hostile territory. She checked her scope settings, consulted her range card, and settled into a firing position that was subtly different from what was taught in the school's curriculum. Rodriguez watched through binoculars as Blaze lined up the shot. He could see the difference in her demeanor immediately. Gone was the nervousness and uncertainty that had plagued her during training. In its place was the cold focus of a professional killer. The shot echoed across the range, and Rodriguez saw the bullet impact dead center on the target. "Again," he said. Blaze fired 4 more rounds in rapid succession, each one striking within inches of the center of the target. The grouping was tighter than Rodriguez had seen from most of the instructors, let alone the students. "Holy shit," Rodriguez breathed. "Morrison, you're not a sniper student. You're a sniper instructor who's been pretending to be a student." Blaze began breaking down her rifle, her expression unreadable. "Master Sergeant, I appreciate your interest, but this doesn't change anything. I failed the qualification. I'm being removed from the program." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, thinking through the implications of what he had just witnessed. "Morrison, what if I told you there might be another option?" "What kind of option?" "The kind that recognizes what you actually are instead of trying to force you into a mold that doesn't fit." That evening, Rodriguez made a phone call to someone whose number was listed in his personal directory under Emergency Use Only. The conversation was brief and conducted in the kind of careful language that people use when discussing classified matters over unsecured lines. The next morning, as Blaze was preparing to leave Fort Benning, she was summoned to the office of Colonel Patricia Hayes, the commanding officer of the sniper school. Hayes was a career officer who had overseen the training of hundreds of snipers, but she had never encountered a situation quite like this. "Sergeant Morrison," Hayes began, "I received an interesting phone call last night. It seems there are some discrepancies between your official personnel file and your actual qualifications." Blaze remained silent, unsure of how much the colonel knew or was authorized to know. "I'm told that you have experience that far exceeds anything we teach in this school," Hayes continued. "Experience that was gained in operations that I don't have the clearance to ask about." Hayes opened a folder on her desk and pulled out a document that Blaze didn't recognize. "This is a letter from the Department of the Army, recommending that you be immediately certified as a sniper instructor rather than continuing as a student. It seems that someone with considerable influence believes your talents are being wasted in our basic program." Blaze felt her heart racing. "Ma'am, I don't understand." "Morrison, how would you feel about staying at Fort Benning, but as an instructor rather than a student, teaching advanced techniques to soldiers who have already completed the basic program?" Blaze was stunned. After 6 weeks of failure and humiliation, she was being offered the opportunity to teach the very skills that her instructors had claimed she didn't possess. "Ma'am, I would be honored," she said. Hayes smiled for the first time since Blaze had entered the office. "Good, because starting Monday, you'll be working with Master Sergeant Rodriguez to develop a new curriculum for advanced sniper operations. Your official title will be Senior Instructor, Special Operations Marksmanship." As Blaze left the colonel's office, she encountered Staff Sergeant Dalton in the hallway. The man who had spent 6 weeks trying to break her down looked confused and slightly angry. "Morrison," he said, "I heard you're not leaving. I thought you washed out." Blaze looked at him with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout her weeks of struggle. "I didn't wash out, Staff Sergeant. I was reassigned." Dalton's expression darkened. "Reassigned to what?" "Your new supervisor," Blaze replied quietly. "I'll be overseeing advanced training for graduates of the basic program." The color drained from Dalton's face as the implications hit him. The woman he had spent 6 weeks humiliating was now going to be a superior officer. That's not possible, Dalton stammered. Staff Sergeant, Blaze said, her voice carrying a new authority. I think you'll find that a lot of things are possible when you stop making assumptions about what people are capable of. As she walked away, Blaze felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond personal vindication. She had been given the opportunity to share the skills that had kept her alive through 4 years of operations that the world would never know about. Skills that could make the difference between life and death for the next generation of military snipers. 6 months later, the Advanced Sniper Operations Program that Blaze Morrison had developed was being studied by military training facilities around the world. Her methods, which combined traditional marksmanship with unconventional techniques learned in classified operations, had produced some of the most effective snipers in military history. But perhaps more importantly, Blaze had learned something about the difference between fitting in and finding where you belong. She had spent 6 weeks trying to conform to standards that didn't recognize her actual capabilities, and it had nearly destroyed her confidence in herself. The rifle with 73 notches now sat in a place of honor in her instructor's office, not as a trophy of past kills, but as a reminder that experience comes in many forms, and that the most valuable skills are often the ones that can't be taught in a classroom. Staff Sergeant Dalton, meanwhile, had been reassigned to a different training program after it became clear that his methods were better suited to breaking down recruits than building up professionals. He never spoke publicly about his interactions with Blaze Morrison, but those who knew him said he had become more thoughtful about making quick judgments regarding a soldier's potential. The 73 notches carved into Blaze Morrison's rifle stock represented more than just confirmed kills. They represented moments when her skills had made the difference between mission success and failure, between her teammates coming home alive or not coming home at all. And now, those same skills were being passed on to a new generation of warriors who would carry on the tradition of precision, professionalism, and deadly effectiveness that defined the military's most elite marksmen. Because sometimes, the person who appears to be failing is actually operating at a level so far beyond the standard that the standard itself becomes meaningless. And sometimes, recognizing that difference can transform not just an individual career, but an entire program's understanding of what excellence really looks like.